Welcome. If you haven't received one already, there is a printed copy of the strategy out front. We can send you a PDF also, just if you want to save paper. I would say, we're looking at the outline of a national security strategy for the new administration, one that's not even in place yet, but certainly there's a lot of thinking about what on earth will a new policy look like for this region. And I'll stand here and tell you that President Trump is no stranger to Central Asia. As the 45th President of the United States, he hosted the presidents of Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan to the White House. He used his commerce and state secretaries as emissaries to the region for economic reform and other types of engagement. He promoted increased energy pipeline connectivity to join Central Asian markets to westward. His administration increased funding for USAID and other development efforts that would help facilitate economic development and WTO accession assistance for the region. The State Department ramped up its diplomatic engagements under President Trump. USTR, the TIPA Council were all extremely active with the region. President Trump's own Development Finance Corporation signed a $1 billion memorandum of understanding with Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan, which unfortunately didn't get implemented. But these are really remarkable efforts by an administration for a region that, thought itself not that important to U.S. policy, but in fact, it really had been. And perhaps most important of all, the administration adopted a multi-year, long-term regional strategy for the region that harnessed U.S. commercial, diplomatic, security, and development tools to ensure that Central Asia became a regular component of U.S. foreign policy instead of just being addressed as an afterthought. The Biden administration embraced that strategy and carried it forward. But Central Asia today looks quite different than it did 4 years ago. What we see today is that landlocked Central Asia has begun to break out of its infrastructure constraints and its heirloom partnerships. It is now reaching across the Caspian to work with Azerbaijan and Georgia, creating a new, rapidly expanding and booming trade corridor to the west. Why so much change in 4 years? Well, there was the COVID pandemic, let's not forget. Frozen economies for the region. There was the U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan and heightened security fears that came with that. There was Russia's second invasion of Ukraine. There is increased resistance in the region to Russia as a default partner for engagements. There were renewed threats of extremist ideologies and terrorist organizations in the region. There's an emerging peace between Armenia and Azerbaijan. And of course, there's the organic development of a middle corridor for trade and energy supply, including substantial indigenous and global investment. These changes and the resulting growth and transformation of Central Asia and the Caucasus could work well with the new Trump administration's espoused interests. Many of the tools and approaches that were used by the first Trump administration could be reprised to yield significant benefits and a deeper U.S. Trans-Caspian partnership. So we'll look into this a little bit more in detail to understand a little bit about what's motivating change in the region. There is a great power and regional realignment that's taking place. Russia's second invasion of Ukraine sparked a number of changes in this region. The countries of Central Asia and the Caucasus have seen their traditional trade routes, banking and financial regulations, as well as business partnerships disrupted by the war and by international sanctions. This has forced them to adapt. While Russia maintains significant influence in the region, Moscow is playing less of a dominant role in the region's economies, security, and political spheres, as the Trans-Caspian countries have sought alternative partners to the near-exclusive arrangements they once shared with Russia. Taking advantage of Russia's declining influence, China has increased engagement and investment in infrastructure across the broader region as it seeks to develop more rapid access to European markets to respond to sanctions itself, using the middle corridor, as well as to secure access to the region's natural resources. Competition with an aggressive China has further reduced Moscow's traditional regional role. However, sanctions compliance for the Central Asian and Caucasus countries have become a justification to develop new trade partnerships and alliances instead of their old reliance upon Russia and China. Countries in the Trans-Caspian region do not seek to jump from one colonial master in Moscow to another one in Beijing. Instead, these countries are developing a greater sense of agency and ability to engage more broadly in relationships beyond their immediate neighborhood. Whether it is counterbalancing the influence of their large neighbors or outright looking for alternative partnerships, the door is open for greater U.S. engagement and cooperation if Washington steps up. So as a result of these developments, the nascent Trans-Caspian region is becoming effectively a growing geopolitical crossroads for U.S. interests and for Washington's increased attention. And I would say reasons for this include an increasingly competitive China, an aggressive and less predictable Russia, a growing threat of regional resurgence of Islamic terrorism, an unstable Afghanistan, a more cooperative Iran, and a renascent Turkey seeking to be a gateway to Europe and the Middle East. So what are U.S. interests in this region? Well, there are many of them, but we'll focus on 4 today. One is, as I just mentioned, the revivified great power competition between the United States, China, and Russia, which magnifies the importance of the Trans-Caspian region in terms of policy and developmental priorities. Second, the Trans-Caspian region is becoming a vital geopolitical and economic crossroads important to U.S. interests that seek to counter Russia's restrictions on the region's gas, oil, uranium supplies, as well as China's efforts to control next-generation energy. Third, the United States needs to maintain security agreements and build closer partnerships with the Trans-Caspian region due to shared concerns over renewed threats from terrorist organizations and ideologies, as well as the region's geostrategic location bordering Russia, China, Afghanistan, and Iran. Fourth, interestingly, the normalization of U.S. policy in Central Asia can be a model for integrating a similar coherent and foresighted approach to engaging with the 3 Caucasus countries and bringing them all together. U.S. strategic priorities of developing alternatives to China as a source for refined strategic minerals and to assist Europe in reducing its dependence on Russian energy parallel those of the resource-rich Trans-Caspian countries. They seek to develop economic sovereignty and global market alternatives to their neighbors, Russia and China. That said, new U.S. policymakers need to recognize the threat to the natural alliance of U.S. and Trans-Caspian interests as Moscow and Beijing seek to retain their own advantages in the region, while the Caucasus and Central Asian countries seek not just to counterbalance those interests, but to diversify and to exploit regional opportunities and connectivity to reach out to global markets. Policymakers also need to recognize that the Caucasus and Central Asian countries will do business with their neighbors. You always do business with your neighbors. But they do not see any arrangements with Russia and China as zero-sum. Instead, they work to access global markets and global commodity pricing on their own terms, not terms dictated to them by their neighbors. This emerging regional economic and energy crossroads would greatly benefit from a new strategic and inventive U.S. partnership. So what would that look like? An updated U.S. strategy for Central Asia will continue to work with the 5 Central Asian countries to enhance their sovereignty, their stability, their self-reliance and independence from malign actors. U.S. engagement will continue to work with these countries bilaterally and as a regional group to develop political, economic, and security partnerships with the United States. However, a new administration strategy will be doomed to half measures if it does not include the partner and gateway countries of the Caucasus, Armenia, Azerbaijan, and Georgia. A key development success for Central Asia since 2021 has been the opening of the new Middle Corridor. This enables trade and connectivity to advance across the Caspian and the Caucasus to European markets. This enhanced routing has afforded the C5 countries with new trade partners and alternatives to Russia's sanctioned northern corridor and the distant sea lanes via China. Critical to the Middle Corridor's success has been warming relations between Baku and the C5 countries, massive expansion of the port of Baku, the only seaport on the Western Caspian, and increased cooperation between Astana, Baku, and Tbilisi to facilitate energy connectivity as well as rapid, cost-efficient cargo transit. Absent Caucasus engagement and throughput, Central Asia will remain prisoner to legacy rail and road routes controlled by Russia and China, as well as hostage to trade policies and commodity pricing imposed by Moscow and Beijing. The multimodal Middle Corridor is comprised of a network of road, rail, and sea lanes that expand Central Asia's options and move goods to, with, and through the Caucasus region, securing access to global markets. Growing policy connectivity, mutual investment, and complementarity of vision between the Caucasus and Central Asian capitals reinforces this merged interest region's quest for greater strategic independence and economic autonomy, particularly as soft and hard infrastructure measures are integrating the 8 countries into an interconnected regional economy. The long-standing conflict between Armenia and Azerbaijan has been a roadblock to a regional approach by the United States to the Caucasus region, but a nascent homegrown peace process between Yerevan and Baku may change that prospect. The leaders and diplomats of these 2 countries have made progress and appear close to a resolution. Some issues remain. But Ankara and Yerevan have met and appear ready to normalize relations once an agreement between Yerevan and Baku is formalized. Central Asian leaders have also met with their Caucasus counterparts, as a new freight line through that region could greatly diversify regional connectivity and cargo throughput. This is an indigenous peace process between Armenia and Azerbaijan, and after more than 3 decades of conflict, post-conflict rehabilitation and confidence-building measures would be a powerful role for the United States to play, assisting the Caucasus countries to adopt a forward-leaning agenda, and U.S. assistance can continue to support the improvements to such regional rail capacity as well as Georgian ports and other infrastructures that would constitute a strategic transformational set of engagements. Rapid integration and reorientation parallels U.S. interest in seeing the region become more resilient and economically sovereign. So now I'm going to devolve into strategy language, which I apologize for, but this document is written in the format that is often used by the National Security Council and others. The United States has important strategic opportunities and interests in Central Asia and the Caucasus, and they include supporting the sovereignty, independence, and territorial integrity of the Trans-Caspian countries, preventing security threats to the United States homeland and interests globally, whether from homegrown violent extremists or actors transiting through the region, taking advantage of increasing areas for United States business and industry to develop trade in this re-emergent crossroads region, and encouraging U.S. investment in, development of, and access to the region's energy and mining sector as part of global energy markets. All strategies have what they call an end state target, what the region will look like after U.S. engagement. By 2030, Central Asia and the Caucasus are self-reliant and secure blocs that is deepening engagement with the United States, and in which each country is implementing reforms that further open the region to international investment and strengthening democratic institutions. The countries of the region are increasingly better connected to Europe and global markets in the heart of a neighborhood bounded by Russia, China, Afghanistan, Iran, and Turkey. The 8 Trans-Caspian countries strengthen their economic and political sovereignty, develop greater resilience, and improve their willingness and ability to cooperate with each other. How then do you take such a vision and translate it for departments and agencies? You use what they're called strategic objectives. These are action directives for departments and agencies to actually engage through various programs and lines of effort. First among these, supporting and strengthening the sovereignty and independence and economic resilience of the Caucasus and Central Asian countries, individually and collectively as a Trans-Caspian region. Assist and develop regional security capabilities to address terrorist and external threats. Third, champion connectivity and bolster cooperation within and between the Caucasus and Central Asian countries. Fourth, foster rule of law reform and respect for human rights. Fifth, support the development of Trans-Caspian energy sources. And lastly, promote United States investment in and development of Trans-Caspian trade and transit corridors. Now, in this document, there are a lot of recommendations for departments and agencies in the United States. I invite you to read them, the long list. It's not exhaustive by any stretch, but is indicative of what would fall into place in this kind of strategy and how you implement it. I'll just reiterate a few here for the White House. Appointing a special representative for the Caucasus and Central Asia region, as once used to happen. A dedicated envoy could help focus advancing U.S. national interests in the region while fostering partnerships with regional governments, international financial institutions, and the private sector. And we're talking promoting energy cooperation, particularly traditional and next generation energies, strengthening counterterrorism partnerships, encouraging policy reforms that facilitate direct investment to the region, deepening engagement between the C5 and the Caucasus countries, hosting a Trans-Caspian summit or ministerial here in Washington, bringing these countries together and creating, again, helping facilitate that partnership, conducting an historic summit in the region, the opportunity for a U.S. president to be the first to visit this region. That doesn't happen very often. There are very few countries left that a U.S. president hasn't been to. This region would be a perfect target. The National Security Council recommendation, obviously, developing a Trans-Caspian regional strategy, and then essentially working to see the interagency actually be able to implement this strategy and to roll it out. That is a major undertaking, I can attest. The State Department, a key recommendation is to appoint senior, qualified ambassadors and staff to the region and make sure that we actually have staffed positions and not acting holes that need to be filled over a longer period of time. U.S. aid, prioritizing programming that supports the development of economic sovereignty, energy independence, next generation technology. Department of Defense, working on targeted security cooperation and partnership initiatives. Commerce Department, trade delegations to the region, supporting U.S. business interest and engagement, expanding programs that help facilitate the development of a business environment conducive to U.S. investment. Department of Energy, promoting engagement with the United States for strategic minerals and rare earth cooperation, discussing and promoting cooperation in the adoption of technology for small modular reactors, nuclear reactors. Other departments and agencies can tackle everything from countering foreign disinformation campaigns and so forth. For Congress, obviously, foremost among these is repeal of the Jackson-Vanik amendments, which would pave the way for the president to be authorized to extend permanent normal trade relations with the countries of the region. Long overdue. The Senate needs to prioritize confirmations of ambassadors to the region and avoid, again, the long delays and gaps. Certainly more congressional fact-finding missions, familiarization trips and exchanges to the region, CODELs, are absolutely critical because many still see this region as it was even 10 years ago, is dated at this point because the region is developing so rapidly. We need more resources for the region. There's no question about that, and that falls in Congress's lap. Just to wrap up briefly, the geopolitical landscape in Central Asia and the Caucasus has evolved significantly in the last 4 years particularly. The new Trump administration will encounter a Trans-Caspian region, one where they are offered unprecedented opportunities for collaboration with like-minded partners from Central Asia and the Caucasus who are themselves seeking alternatives to the influence of neighboring Russia and China. This changed and cooperative region seeks greater business and trade connectivity with the United States. which is creating important openings, particularly in traditional and, as I say, next generation energy fields, as well as in manufacturing. To meet this historic demand and outreach, the United States should expand its regional efforts in Central Asia undertaken in the first Trump administration to now engage with the broader Trans-Caspian region through a whole-of-government approach. A new U.S. administration strategy should leverage the lessons and initiatives from prior administrations, particularly those of the first Trump administration, to foster deeper political, economic, and security partnerships with this region. And by supporting indigenous efforts such as the development of the Middle Corridor, the emerging peace process between Armenia and Azerbaijan, the U.S. can contribute to the stability and prosperity for the entire region while opening up new and larger avenues for American collaboration. Ultimately, a well-crafted U.S. policy in the Trans-Caspian region has the potential to secure long-term benefits both for the United States and its regional partners. By promoting sovereignty, resilience, and needed economic reforms, the U.S. can help transform Central Asia and the Caucasus into a self-reliant and globally integrated bloc capable of balancing the influence of powerful neighbors like Russia and China.